if I ask you what's a venom combo that you usually see a lot, well, you see something like this to get a fuzzy setup. Well, what if I told you I myself think that it's better to end like this? This is the HQV setup. Before going in on how amazing this setup is, I want to specify it's not. It has many different weaknesses and you're not forced to use it. As an example, the main problem is you don't get the fuzzy. I already just showed you that this mix-up doesn't enable the 5k JS, so you don't lose the fuzzy. You are too far away, you 5k, you cannot do anything. And even if I start with a different combo, I do closer shroud, it's a gonna miss. So this setup does not enable you in any way for a fuzzy setup. Another problem it has is it's susceptible to lose to DPs. Now, this kind of changes because, as you can see here, if you try to go over this, I lose to DP, but there are ways that I discovered to bait DP with any version of this setup. So, before going to what the setup actually enables, let's see what it defeats. First of all, if I go for this and I set the enemy to 6p on wake up, counter it. This is because H actually it's lower than K, but funny thing is, if we actually set the enemy to backdash on wake up, and we do a combo that instead makes him closer to the corner, this setup actually beats backdash as well, automatically. And cause you do this setup often by setuping another ball, I'm gonna explain later why. This means that on reaction, you can just run up and get a combo from this. Now, if we instead talk about DPs, it depends on everything you do basically. If you do some kind of mix-ups, you need to drastically change something about it. As an example, with the S mix-up, with the ball S mix-up, normally I get snuffed out if I go for it all the way, but if I delay either jump, the button, or the kick, I win, which is kinda weird. But then there are also some setups, like the P-ball setup, that win no matter what. So if I go this, P and then run up, I win, no matter what I do. Even if I go for something that where I don't run up with P setup, oops, like here, I still win, because the 2k just puts me low enough that I win. Obviously I lose to RTL, but again. And then there are things like this that lose constantly to DP, like there is no actual answer. So now that we know everything, let's go through mix-ups. First of all, the 4-way mix-up, and I'm gonna specify, I put throw on block, so you know that this is a throw mix-up. This is actually very finicky, but also very ambiguous, because if I go and run a little more, I actually go on the back, but if I run a little less, if I do the same exact combo, but hit him in the first active frame, I stay front, and it's a counter it, so it's actually a frame trap. Then you can also do an empty jump that's throw on block and gives you either strike or throw mix-up, while also being DP safe, so this is one of the DP safe scenarios. I do this, and I go into command throw, and this is almost unreactable, the enemy needs to guess here, or I can go low with it K. And if I set him to DP, because I'm blocking all the while I'm falling, if the enemy DP is on wake up, oh, hold up, here, I win, because I blocked it in there. But the best thing I think this mix-up enables is the fact that after you do the wall combo, you can actually go here, do the wall combo, and after the 5k set up another ball. And here you're plus 18 from what I tested with Frame Data Mod. And you can use that ball for many other things, and every ball has these unique scenarios. As an example, I can do here, set up a P ball and go for a D, and then plus one block steal here, and plus one, depending on spacing. Or I can set up a K ball in this exact scenario, and now I can go for each stop stuff. Now this shows that basically you have endless possibilities from this mix-up, but for now I'm going to show you only the ones I've discovered, starting with the P setup, this one. Now the possibilities you have from this setup vary depending on what you want to do on block. As an example, you can start with something simple as we just saw earlier, which is the 5D. Now you can 2k before it to make it even more ambiguous, and depending on spacing you can be +1 on block, so it's still your turn. But you can also do stuff like this, and instead go for some spacing stuff with 2k. And for example, after the 2k you can also do something like this, like H carcass, right here, 5k H carcass, and then keep going in the block string. Now there are gaps there, but it's still an option you can do to mix up the opponent a little more. Or you can do something even more funny, which is run up 2k, even with the 2k, set up another ball behind the 2k. Now, I failed, I set up a less ball by mistake, but you get the point. You can do almost endless possibilities from one of these kind of mix-ups. And it's all about part of your imagination. As an example here, I can decide to do something like this, maybe against Potemkin, to maintain zoning, then poke later with a Fares or a Stingray. Now we go into what I think is the weakest one of them all, which is the S-ball. On paper, this setup is kinda useful, but it has a lot of weaknesses. First of all, it depends on what you do. As an example, here you can do a space trap with 6H on the S-ball, right, like this, but P already does this way better. The main thing you can do though here is, as an example, set up the ball, and then eat it with JS and then JH, and you can get a high-low, basically a rejump JD or a JH to K. Also, this is one of the only type of setups that you need to change depending on where you are on screen, because if you put the enemy in the corner with your combo, then JS no longer works, and you need to do instead is this with JH, and then do JD on the way down if you want to go for high-low. The main problem with this setup right here is that it has a lot of gaps, mainly after the JH, and the enemy can match. Fortunately, at least at the start, everything is true, because even if the enemy tries to 6p earlier on, during the JS here, they will still lose, and they can't do it later because then they will immediately block the ball. Despite this setup having glaring weaknesses and gaps, you can still use it, and this is one of the best things about HQV, is the fact that you have just so many options from this setup that you can just go for something true like this, and then mix up with something untrue like the S follow-up. Now that we clarified that, we can talk about the one that is the most untrue, which is the K follow-up. Now, there are options you can do from the K follow-up that are true on block. As an example, the one that we talked about earlier, which is using it as a way to set up the hit stop stuff. For the one that don't know, basically, if Venom hits with 6k a ball that is on the back, here he is plus on block. I think he is +5, so you can threaten a throw, a command throw, or a strike. Now, this top stuff is very good, but you can also use this setup as a way to restart your pressure like this. Basically, the idea I have about this is, after you condition the opponent by doing stuff that is true, as an example like 5k dash cancel, or even better, 5k into air dash like this, then you can abuse the K ball to repeat this situation after already setting up another ball. So as an example, here you set up a K ball and then do the air dash AD. Or even better, if you think you condition them enough, you can just go crazy and set up a third ball like this, which is kinda fun, honestly. Now, at first there was one that I couldn't find any use for, and it was HQV. But then I discovered I could use this either for strike throw or as a decoy. In a strike throw scenario, this ball comes very handy because if you do a strike or anything else, it just hits. But if you do a throw and then 5k, you can get a cross-up mix-up, which is kinda insane. So you're basically setting it up for later. What I mean instead for decoy is basically this is a blank ball. You set it up just to scare the opponent into any of the other setups. Because the enemy sees that, knows you're still +18, but doesn't know what options you have from an H ball. So you just go crazy and use it as a way to set up pressure. The last one I discovered for now was pretty fucking obvious, but it's through the use of meter, and it's obviously 5k into Dark Angel, like this, instantaneous. Now, I needed to use myself as a bot, because for some fucking reason the bot can't block this shit, but this is fucking insane. Not only has all of these blocks done, but no matter what reversal the enemy does, you just win the interaction. Even the reversals that clash basically still give the win to Venom, because then he can just get up and win the interaction. Now, Despite these 10 minutes of interactions I just showed you, I am here to tell you I barely scratched the surface of what I think HQV can enable. I myself said at the start of the video that I don't think this setup is amazing, it's just good, and that it has some weaknesses. But despite that, I think HQV could be something that if we all come together and scrape our heads around to find more and more options, it could just grow to infinity.